Hello all and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is fine-tuning user access in a SharePoint document library. And we're going to be exploring this topic today. It's a question I get asked a lot about how you can add accesses for SharePoint document library files. And so I think this is a timely webinar to help people with this kind of trouble that they have. But first, a little bit about us. We are Advisicon, and here at Advisicon, we help organizations to achieve a greater impact by leveraging work management technologies, and really we're hoping to help you accomplish more with less. And as work management consultant and technology specialists, our focus is really on streamlining processes, improving systems, and achieving better outcomes for our clients all around the globe. So let's get started. And a little bit about myself. My name is David Oswald. I'm a project advisor here at Advisicon and an automation specialist. I do have a background in engineering and manufacturing, experience in data analysis and reporting, and pulling data together in a lot of disciplines, a lot of different areas. I've got 25 years experience in Excel and VBA, maybe more than 25 now, and consider myself an expert in that area and love those tools. It's a large tool and there's always something to learn there. So I also work with SharePoint, doing SharePoint design and administration type work. And that's where our focus is today, on the SharePoint. I have Microsoft project experience, and my focus there is on automating Microsoft project and automating with workflows and macros within projects and power automations. A little tidbit about myself: I have visited all of the states in the United States except for Alaska and Hawaii. I like to travel. Our family's traveled a lot. I'm currently living in Atlanta, Georgia, and enjoying it there. So, all right, let's jump to today's agenda. Today's agenda, like I said, is about SharePoint document libraries. So we're going to first dive into a little bit about SharePoint document libraries. We're going to talk about what they are and how you may see them and find them. Another thing next after that, we're going to talk about permissions. We're just going to talk a little bit about document library permissions and what that means. And we've got three areas of permissions that we're going to dig into. We're going to dig into site level permissions, library level permissions, and then we'll dig in and talk about file and directory level permissions. Then we'll summarize it at the end, and hopefully you can take away some information that helps you in your day-to-day work with SharePoint. First, let's talk about SharePoint document libraries, and let's see a little bit about what they are. They're a vital part of the Microsoft infrastructure, and a lot of Microsoft file storage is built and has been built on SharePoint document libraries for some time. Document libraries, basically it's file storage, helps you easily find files, helps you collaborate, give you collaborative access with other people that have access to those files. And you may have in the past gone in and worked on a Word document, let's say, and somebody else in your organization is working on the same Word document, and you can actually see their changes as you type. All of that's built on SharePoint, on top of SharePoint, and on top of the SharePoint document library. Nice thing about document libraries, they're in the cloud. And what does that mean about being in the cloud? We hear that a lot, but really it's stored not on your local machine. It's stored in the secure servers that Microsoft provides, and then you can access those files, that information from any device at any time. I mean, I say any device, but any applicable device, which is most tablets and phones and computers, and any device that has a modern web browser. Can access your files, any device at any time. The word document library. I mean, the word library is, you think of a library, you think of books, and it's stored, and well, these are the documents that are being stored in this library. It's a place for you to store your files and your documents. So that's a document library. And like I say, Microsoft document libraries are the backbone of a lot of the Microsoft products that are out there. They live on top of it. They utilize document libraries, and it's the back end workhorse of Microsoft. And they're housed on a SharePoint. Document libraries are housed within a SharePoint. We kind of think of a SharePoint site as being this nice, beautiful, creation that somebody can put together as a site with nice pictures and things like that. But it also houses documents, and that's where your document libraries are found. Yes, a SharePoint has web parts that can make it look great, but it can also display and house, it houses a document library and then just can display it on that SharePoint that you can use it from. As already mentioned, a lot of the products that Microsoft has, such as PowerPoint or Excel or Word, they use a SharePoint document library. If they're stored there, you can collaborate and uses that collaboration of a SharePoint document library. OneDrive. Some people think of OneDrive as a separate entity, and they say, okay, well, here's my OneDrive stuff, and here's my SharePoint stuff, but and they think they're separate, and they are. I mean, you can think of them conceptually as different tools, but behind a OneDrive is a SharePoint document library. So you can actually go out to a OneDrive and see where it's stored in a SharePoint document library. In a minute, we're going to see the same with Teams, but that would apply to OneDrive as well. And Teams, there at the bottom of the screen here, we see that Teams interacts with SharePoint document libraries. This is the same type of deal where the files, they appear to be stored in Teams, but in the back end is a SharePoint document library. And this is just the start of it. A lot of other tools that Microsoft creates and is using are based on SharePoint document libraries. Very important. It's the building block of a lot of things for Microsoft, and so it's good to know how this works together, even if it's just from a little conceptual piece, to know that in the back there is a SharePoint document library. All right, let's take a look at a SharePoint. So this is our SharePoint I've got here for a little demo that we've got. And you can see I've got pretty pictures on it, and I've got a little map. And, you can make a SharePoint site look great and do different things and give you a lot of different tools that come into one place. And that's a great thing about a SharePoint site. But behind it is a document library that stores the documents that you have, and a lot of the documents that are built in the SharePoint itself are stored in other kinds of libraries. But in this case, somebody has put a document library widget on a SharePoint site, so I can see my document library. You don't have to have a document library on a SharePoint site, but many times they do. And this is a lot of times where you will find your document library. I like to tell people when they see a document library on a SharePoint, yes, you can interact with the files here, and you can dig into the directories, and you can right-click on them and get a menu item here. But if you want the full power of the document library, I suggest to click on the See All in the upper right-hand corner of the document library. This takes you to the full document library. You can you have a little more power in the options in the little 3 dots that are beside the names. You get more power if you're inside the document library. The three dots kind of gives you a limited access into the files. So if I'm going to be doing any work on in a document library from a SharePoint, I always click on the See All. I suggest you do the same too, just to give yourself a little more power. It's frustrating sometimes when you hit the right click on a file and you want to do something and that option's not there. So, all right. I said that OneDrive and Teams and a lot of other Microsoft tools are built on SharePoint and with a document library. And the same is with Teams. I said I was going to show you a little demo on Teams. This on the left-hand side of the screen is a Teams channel. And you've probably been to a Teams channel before. If not, a Teams is a great tool for collaborating and working on projects together, and I highly recommend it for work management. But you see this team here called Channel 1. It has an area for files. All the teams would have a files tab up here, and when you click on the Files tab, it shows you the files that are for that team. Now, the thing about it is you don't really know that this is sitting on a SharePoint, but I can right-click or hit the three dots here, and I can say, I can then see in my menu, it says Open in SharePoint. If you try that, go to your team site, find your files, say open, and hit right click and see the option Open in SharePoint. You may have noticed it and like, well, what does that mean? You click on Open in SharePoint and it will open the SharePoint site that houses this document library. If you'll see, this was Channel 1. Here's my documents, Channel 1, and it's the same documents. So just to show you that this document libraries are very important in housing documents for a lot of different Microsoft tools. And that's why I feel it's important for you to understand how document library permissions get set. Sometimes you may be in charge of some files, or you may be in charge of some document libraries and need to give permissions to people, and maybe even a Teams site, and you want to be able to see who has permissions or be able to go to the place where the permissions are. It can always go back to the SharePoint document library to find those permissions. So very important to know how to do this. Let's talk a little bit about where to set permissions. So the permissions for a document library, and we're focusing on document libraries and files and folders today, can be set at many different levels. You can set it at the group level of the tenant. You can make a group in a tenant and give that access at the site collection level. You can give it at the site level. Site level meaning the SharePoint site level, site collection level meaning the collection of all your SharePoint sites. You can give that permission at the document library level, or you can actually give the permissions and set permissions at the folder and file level. Let's talk a little bit about what's the best practices. Best practices would say that you want to give the accesses at the highest level of this that you can, because what happens is your accesses roll down to the lower levels. If I give the access at the tenant group level and have everything set up, then all of the accesses roll down. Same with site collection, they'll roll down. Site level, they'll roll down all the way down. So it's better to give it the higher you can. Usually it's at the site level or the document level, because if you give it at the collection level and tenant group level, I mean those are good too. I mean, so a lot of people use those, but as you get down, you get more granular in your being able to set them. And so that's what we're going to focus on today a little bit, is the site level and below. Site level, document level, folder level, and file level. But just keep in mind that the higher you go in this hierarchy is the better for setting permissions. All right, let's talk a little bit about how you set permissions for your SharePoint document library at the site level. remember our site here that we had, and here's the members. If I look over up at the upper right-hand corner, I see the members. It says I've got 16 members for this particular site. What I can do, let me bring my site over here. If I click on this item up here, click on this little icon and it says how many members. If you're an owner or member, or you have the right permissions, you can add members. You can delete members. I can come in here and remove a member. This is a way that from at the site level, I can add, delete, and give different accesses for the entire site. I'm going to remove this one here. I can remove it. See, I removed it. I can add him back, add members. If I start, and this goes out to your company's directory, and maybe is that 16? Find this here. I can add it, and at this point, I can make him a member or an owner. I can set their permission levels. So these are the permission levels that you can get at the site level. There's other ways you can do this, but this is one handy way to set permissions at the site level. And what that does is these permissions now are for the entire site. This site, that the person, I mean, if you made them an owner, then they're an owner of the site. They can do whatever they want with it. Members have a little less authority on it, but and you'd have to. There's other things we could look at. It's outside of the scope of today's webinar, but other ways you can look and say what kind of permissions do each of these have. But it also flows down to the document library. So the person that has access here also has those same accesses for the document library. Sometimes that's great and what you want. And a lot of times if you set up your site and only a certain group should access that site, then that works great. However, sometimes you may want to have a document library here that everybody can access, but you may also want a second document library that only the managers can access, special information that only managers should have access to, or only certain people, let's say. And so sometimes you need to be able to set the access at the document library level. All right, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the permissions at the document library level. This is a different way to go into that. So what we're going to do to get into accesses for the document library level is we're going to access the gear wheel in the upper right corner of your SharePoint. Let's go in there and explore that a little bit. I'm hitting the gear wheel. And what you'd want to do is you'd want to go to Site Contents. Your document library is content. And so we're going to Site Contents is where the contents of this site live. And if you see there's types here under type, I've got several document libraries. Some of these other document libraries are there for the SharePoint site's use. But your document library is usually named Documents. I could come in here and I could go into Settings and I could change the name of my document library. And so it doesn't say Documents. I could change it to Manager Documents or something more applicable, but I could come in here and change the name of Documents. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to leave it Documents. Let's go back a screen. Can I go back a screen? Back to my document library. I just want to show you going in there again. What I'm going to do is choose these three dots, just like I did. I'm going to go to Settings. And in my settings, I have permissions for this document library. This is where I can go in and I can see the permissions that are applied to this document library. Now, this is where you would make any changes if you needed to fine-tune your accesses. Let's take a look here up in the upper left-hand corner. I don't know if you can read this button. Let's make that a little bigger. It says delete unique permissions. What that means is right now, oh, do I have unique permissions? Oh, I've already got this set as unique permissions. If I delete unique permissions, then it's inheriting my permissions. Sorry, before this course, I was testing it out and making sure everything was working, and I had deleted the unique permissions. Normally, when you come into a document library, what you will see is a button that says Stop Inheriting Permissions. What that means is my document library is inheriting its permissions from the level above. Remember that hierarchy that we showed? So it's inheriting its permissions from the level above. But sometimes I may want to take that document library and fine tune its accesses. So that's where I would hit Stop Inheriting Permissions. And now it is no longer inheriting permissions from above. The accesses are from here and below. So at this point, I could come in and my member list, I could come in here, select my members, and remove their permissions. Now, since I'm not inheriting this from above, those members cannot access my document library anymore. As a matter of fact, they won't even see the documents. They can't get to the documents. They won't have that anymore. So, and I can also come in here and I can grant permissions to whomever I need. I can grant permissions to different groups. I can grant permissions to individuals. And so this is how we can fine tune the permissions on a document library. Now, a word of caution here is that when you do this, you have now broken that inheritance. So if I go in and change permissions up above, they won't be inherited down below. So if I add an individual up above, they won't come down here below unless they're in a group. So if I change the owners group, they'll still be here. But if I added an individual specifically, then they won't come into here. And we'll show that in a minute when we get to the files and the folders. But this is how you can go in and uniquely give permissions to a particular SharePoint document library. All right, let's move along and talk a little bit about the file and directory level. Sometimes you may want to give permissions to a certain directory or even a certain file. This is not a best practice. Best practices would say if you need to give somebody access to a particular file or directory, it might be better to create a new document library or a new SharePoint and give the people access that need that. However, sometimes you just need to go in and be able to do that. There may be a file that a particular person needs access to, and that's the only file that they should have access to. Yes, you can share that out, but that file out. But sometimes a SharePoint has restricted that, and the owner of the SharePoint needs to be able to go in and give that access. I'm going to show you, and I feel like this is the trick up the sleeve that some people have, and to give this granular type of access. And it's used with this knowledge comes great power, but great responsibility. I want to preface this because you can get into a lot of access troubles by using these methods and forgetting that you did it and wondering why certain people can't get access and other people can, and why didn't when I changed it up above, why didn't it get transferred to down below? So again, this is with great power comes great responsibility, but I feel like you can handle it, so I'm going to proceed on. So document library level, we talked about, and now we're going to talk about access at the file level. If I'm in my document library, I can choose the three dots and choose Manage Access. That's where I would start this. Let me pull over my browser again. Let's exit back out of here. And here we are back at our site. Here's my document library. I'm going to click on See All because to me that gives you more power in the document library. And let's say that this particular directory, let's say train users, I only want to give it to certain people. I only want certain people to see this. If I right click here, I can go to Manage Access. Okay, so, and this is going to manage the access on this particular directory. So I manage access. In here, it says who has access, etc., the groups. But here's where I can click on these three buttons and go to Advanced Settings. And when I go to the Advanced Settings, it brings me to the same structure that we had before, that we saw before. It says delete unique permissions. I've got unique permissions set to this. If I delete them, it's now inheriting the permissions from the document library. Again, when you come in, most of them will be inheriting. So you watch this up here. Am I inheriting permissions or do I have unique permissions? You have inheriting permissions or unique permissions. When I come in here with unique permissions, I can come in and remove users. I could get rid of company owners to see it. However, the SharePoint owner would still have access to it. But I can grant permissions. I can grant just to a specific person. Let's see. Diego. I'm going to share this. I can, when I do that, I click on show options and it lets me give his permission level. Do I want him to edit? Do I want him to contribute? Do I want him just to read or restricted view? Usually you'd want to have contribute or read. Contribute is the same as edit, but it's a little more restrictive. I usually give people contribute if I want them to be able to contribute files and edit. This lets you edit files. Whenever I give specific permissions like this, I never send an email invitation. It's just my best practice that I use if I have to use this method, because this method is saying this particular person is going to have access to that. And in this case, only this particular person. So this may be the wrong person. I may have the wrong Diego over here. I might have mistyped the name. And if I'm sending this person an email invitation, then they get it and they have access to that file that I was trying to restrict to this Diego. I never sent an email invitation, but I would then either contact this Diego and say, hey, check the file, see if you have access, so that I make sure I have the right person, or wait for them to say, hey, you told me you were going to get access and I didn't get access. I can then go find out what the problem is. It's just a best practice that I use. When I share it and then I hit refresh, you'll see now that Diego and the owners of this SharePoint are the only ones that have access to that particular directory. So that's how you give that. And honestly, the same thing can go for files. So I can do it at the file level. Roster Excel file, I can come in here. I can say manage access. When I click on the three dots, I can go to advanced settings. And in this case, I'm inheriting permissions, so I can stop inheriting permissions. And now I have unique permissions for this particular file. I can do whatever I need to do. I can grant permissions. I can get rid of permissions, remove user permissions. I'm only going to grant permissions to one person. This is going to be PBI1, and I'm going to share it. Oops, I forgot to not send them an email. So I forgot to click on don't send an email. So it sent an email. I didn't do my best practice that I do. I quickly hit the OK button. But and now you see this particular individual is the only person that has access to this. They have edit access. I can come in here and I can edit their permissions, and I only want him to have contribute. And you can see what the permissions are here when if I click on that and say edit permissions, it tells you what they can do. I like to restrict, if I want somebody just to be edit files, I do it at contribute, or just read files, then I hit read. Those are the two I use most. And now you see he set it contribute. So that's how you do fine tuning of permissions for user access in a SharePoint document library. I just want to summarize here a little bit. First, file storage in SharePoint is through document libraries. We went over that quite a bit and how important it is within the Microsoft ecosystem for SharePoint document libraries and how they're used in a lot of different places. And so a lot of times you can dig down to the SharePoint and the document library, and it's nice to be able to know how to grant accesses. Next is to grant accesses as far up the stream as possible and let that permission inheritance do the work, where I showed inheriting permissions, or you can stop inheriting permissions, but let that inheritance of the permissions do the work. However, sometimes it is just nice to know how to fine tune the access at all levels so the correct access is granted. Also, I showed you how to get in and grant access and change things. It's also handy to be able to go in and see how the accesses are set. And in those screens I showed you, you can see, oh, is this inheriting permissions? Maybe you're having trouble with an access, and it's because somebody has stopped inheriting permissions when you didn't want them to. And so you might need to go and fix that. So now you have the tools to go in to be able to monitor accesses and know who has accesses to the resources of your SharePoint document library. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something today. You can contact us at the number there at the screen. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and also go out to our channels and find other webinars and videos that can help you in your journey to becoming really a focused, streamlined work management company. Thanks again for watching.